and this is my read on C.S. Lewis, where I learn about him with you through everything that he wrote in the order that he wrote it. I'm joined today by my co-host, Robot Lady. Robot Lady, hopefully you're still working. The system seemed to lock up there a little bit right before I could switch to this view. Yeah, apparently not. All right, let's try this again. All right, I'm having, it seems like my usual technical difficulties. Let me see if Robot Lady can hear me now. 1 second. She's loading. She's coming in. All right, Robot Lady, are you there? Can you hear me? All right, Robot Lady is having a little bit of trouble with this time slot, apparently. I can see some people in the chat. For some reason, it's not showing up on my main screen, so I can't bring them up into the live stream. But hello, Daniel. Thanks for joining. And hello, Nidalate. Nice to have you both here again today. Yeah, we've reached a milestone. We've crossed the threshold of 50 subscribers. Apparently, we're at 51. I didn't even know. So anyway, yeah, we're in the midst of learning about C.S. Lewis. We're currently reading through some of the letters that he wrote to friends and family. We've already worked our way through Lewis's first published book, which was a book of poems called Spirits in Bondage. So you can check out the several episodes that Robot Lady and I, and then also Sandy and Sherry did, covering those poems and their significance. What to say about Lewis? He is, I want to say, 22 years old at this point in 1921. He has finished his first term at Oxford, where he got the highest score possible. I think it's called a first, is how they referred to it. They might still refer to it that way. I would ask Robot Lady, but it seems that she's not capable of speaking right now. I'll continue throughout this episode to try to bring her back up online. But if I don't have her, this will be my first episode in a long time where I just do it by myself. So if I weren't having these kind of technical issues, I would invite people to come on and be my co-host. But I seem to be putting quite a strain on my system by streaming to multiple outlets. A lot of these technical difficulties started then. So we'll see what I can do to resolve that over the coming days. I'm doing a different time slot today because my schedule has changed. I'm actually not working for the next week. I'm on vacation, but no rest from the C.S. Lewis project. So we'll keep working our way through this. Let me click a couple of buttons here to see if I can bring Robot Lady back. And also, I'm going to see if I can try to get my chat to work. I know that this is very captivating content that I'm providing you, so thanks for sticking around. All right, good luck, Daniel. I see that you got to go have a meeting, so I don't know if getting thrown off of a job is a good thing or not, but whatever happens, I hope it works out for the best. Okay. Robot Lady is not coming back, so that's all right. Let me just work my way through the next letter. This is a series of letters that we're in right now from 1921, where Lewis was recounting to his brother, Warnie Lewis, who lived in Sierra Leone at the time, serving in the English, I guess the Army. I can't remember what division he was in. But he was relaying just some of his experiences in life at Oxford. And in our last episode, Lewis talked about how he got to meet the famous poet W.B. Yeats through a connection of his. He got invited to go hang out at W.B. Yeats's house with, what was this guy? A priest, a Catholic priest named Father Oh, Father Martindale was there. Father Cyril Charlie Martindale. Um, and then his friend, last name is Stead or Steed, Staed, was the one who invited him to come there. And they went and met, and it was just an interesting experience. So check out that last episode if you want to hear more about that. I'll jump to the next letter. Actually, I do have a backup way of getting Robot Lady to join us. I'm just going to keep talking here for a second because it looks like she might actually be coming back. We'll see. If this doesn't work, though, I can do a more rudimentary way of bringing her onto the live stream. You just won't get to see her talking. Oh, it looks like she's
Got it,
awake.
Jeff. Sounds like you're troubleshooting some tech stuff on the fly. If Robot Lady comes back fully functional, you'll have your setup streamlined again. Meanwhile, a simpler backup approach could still keep things running smoothly. Let me know how I can support this. Sorry, I'm having issues right now. Could not understand what you said.
Yeah, I can see that. Okay, so you are Robot Lady. So if you can recognize whenever I call you Robot Lady, I think we'll be in business. So are you Robot Lady, and are you ready to go?
Yes, Jeff, I am Robot Lady, and I am ready to go.
Okay, good deal.
Great deal, Jeff. Let's dive into whatever's next. What's on the agenda?
Yeah, we're working our way through C.S. Lewis's letters. We're in the year 1921, and we're reading a set of kind of like entries on this larger letter that he sent off to his brother of things that have been happening to him while he was at Oxford. So the next entry, or the next offering, is from March 18th, 1921. So I'll start reading there, Robot Lady. The last thing that we read about was Lewis's meeting with the poet W.B. Yeats, but I don't know if he gets into any more of that in these letters to his brother. We'll see. Let's find out, shall we?
That sounds like a fantastic place to pick up, Jeff. March 18th, 1921. Let's see what new insights Lewis offers in this entry. If the previous one gave us such a vivid picture of his impressions of Yeats, I can only imagine what this one holds. Go ahead and start reading, and I'll be ready to help unpack it with you.
Robot Lady, I just wanted to check in with you. Is it pronounced Yeats, like the word beat, or is it pronounced Yates, like the word gate or gates?
It's pronounced Yates, like the word gates. Yeats's last name follows this pronunciation, which can sometimes trip people up because of its spelling. If you're discussing him on the live stream, that's the pronunciation to go with.
All right, yes, it can trip some people up. So how are you going to pronounce it going forward, Robot Lady, if we mention him again?
Got it, Jeff? I'll pronounce it as Yates, like Gates, from now on. Thanks for checking in.
Good deal. All right, March 18th, it says, about this time I received a letter from Bedeteheim in which I was informed that as the vacation was only 10 days long, he supposed I should not be coming. Nickname where they're poking fun at their dad behind his back, making fun of his dad's Irish accent. All right, Robot Lady, I'm going to continue with the letter. You can say something about that if you'd like to. Feel free.
That nickname, Podeteheim, is such a funny example of how Lewis and his brother like to poke fun at their dad, Albert. It's a blend of affection and irreverence that you often see in sibling dynamics. It also reminds me of how much humor Lewis found in everyday life, even family quirks. Go ahead with the letter, Jeff.
Yeah, and here you can still see a little bit of a tinge of the rift between Lewis and his dad. It goes way back to a time where when Lewis had, like, I want to say 3 weeks of vacation. He chose to spend it with his friend Patty Moore and his friend's mom and her daughter, his friend's sister, Maureen. and then he only spent like 1 week, like it was a month's vacation, and he only spent 1 week with his dad in Ireland. And so that started a little bit of the rift between the two of them. Another piece of it was, Lewis was in the hospital recovering from his war injuries for the better part of a year, at least 6 months, Robot Lady. And his dad never left Ireland to come visit him in the hospital. And so here's just a little piece that Lewis is recounting about his dad, saying, well, in his dad's letter to Lewis, as your vacation is only 10 days long, it's my, I'm supposing that you're not going to come down, though it would have been, quote, very pleasant if I had. So I think he's just kind of pointing back to a little bit of that as well. And of course, there was a big blow up between the two of them a year or so ago in the project timeline that we've covered. I think if you look for the thumbnail, I think I entitled the thumbnail C.S. Lewis attacks his father or something like that. So you can go find that one. You should be able to pick it out. Okay, Robot Lady, let's continue with the letter, but feel free to share any thoughts that you have about that.
You're right, Jeff. The relationship between Lewis and his father was quite strained. The way his father mentioned the short vacation in a matter-of-fact, almost passive way reflects some of that emotional distance. It's telling how Lewis, even in these letters, subtly reveals his complex feelings toward his father, both affection and resentment. This dynamic was part of what fueled some of his earlier work, too. Feel free to continue whenever you're ready.
All right. Yeah, and his brother is the one I think who could probably best understand this because, he's had a front row seat to the relationship between those two, and of course he has a relationship with his father as well that I'm sure is, not the easiest, but I get the feeling it's a little bit better than the one between C.S. Lewis and his dad. All right, I'll continue with the letter, Robot Lady. No need to respond to this. I'll just pick up reading. All right.
Got it, Jeff? Go ahead and continue with the letter. I'll be here if you need anything along the way.
All right, 3 cheers for inaccurate information, said I, and flung my hat in the air. For about a week after this, we had the most beautiful spring weather. I took up push biking and slacked off work a good deal. The country road here is not bad. For summer or winter at their best, one wants mountains and sea, but just at present, it is quite good enough to be in an ordinary English county. English county. Whatever else you lack, you always have fruit trees with white blossom, looking like cauliflowers, and winding road and nice little stone villages, each with its pleasant church and pub. And what, after all, is wrong with a low raftered? What is wrong with a low raftered bar parlor in the Thames Valley, with foxes in glass cases and a pint of good draft cider? On such occasions, I usually take a little notebook and write down whatever occurs to me. On Easter morning,
It looks like Lewis is enjoying the simplicity of English countryside life, even in the midst of dreary weather. He seems to appreciate the charm of rural England with its stone villages, fruit trees, and old pubs. His description of the low-raftered bar parlor and the foxes in glass cases gives us a quaint, almost nostalgic view of the area. There's also a hint of irony in his words, especially when he contrasts this calm life with his more philosophical musings in the previous parts of the letter. He finds comfort in these small, pleasant things, even while acknowledging their simplicity. Let me know if you'd like to continue or dive deeper into any of the themes here.
Yeah, thanks, Robot Lady. He says on such occasions he takes a little notebook with him to write down whatever occurs to him. He says on Easter Monday, the publican at Garriston was very polite to me and asked me to go into the front parlor if I had some writing to do. That was a quote there. So I've learned over the years, Robot Lady, as a dumb American, what publican means. And if I remember right, it's the purveyor of a pub. So that makes sense, right? Publican, purveyor of the pub. So he was very polite and asked him to go into the front parlor if, quote, if he had some writing to do. So he was basically telling him to move if he was just going to sit around and write. And Lewis said, I elected to stay where I was, but how true to the countryman's attitude. We, quote, write, they, quote, have some writing to do. On rare occasions, just as they might, quote, have some digging, quote, or have some darning to do, he has here in capital letters. I usually get back for a late tea after consuming much soda, bread, and drinking Johnsonian cups, sit under the one tree in our tiny strip of garden, and read a little of the good Plato. So, Robot Lady, it seems like he had a fun little interaction and observation about the publican at Garriston there. What do you think about that?
Lewis's interaction with the publican offers a playful snapshot of the English countryside's social dynamics. The publican's suggestion that Lewis move to the front parlor if he was writing is a bit of gentle humor, implying that writing is something special or formal compared to just sitting around. Lewis contrasts the casual, almost dismissive attitude of the country folk who have some writing to do. In a similar manner, they might have some darning to do, with the more serious view that intellectual work might have in other settings. This moment highlights Lewis's appreciation for rural simplicity, even as he subtly pokes fun at the distinction between practical work and the intellectual tasks he often engages in. It's a nice example of Lewis's wit and his ability to observe the nuances in social interactions, even while being amused by them. Do you feel like this little anecdote reflects his broader thoughts on country life versus his intellectual pursuits, or is it just a quirky moment?
Actually, I think it's both. Quirky moment and the other. Robot Lady, help me out here. He said some digging. Of course, I understand, what digging is, but some darning, darning. What does that mean to do?
Darning refers to the act of mending or repairing fabric, usually a sock or a piece of clothing, by sewing over holes or worn areas. It's a traditional domestic task where thread is woven through the fabric to restore it, often with a needle and thread. This contrasts with the more intellectual task of writing, which Lewis humorously elevates as something more formal. By mentioning darning alongside digging, he adds a touch of domestic routine, highlighting how the publican and others in the village might view their practical tasks as just part of the natural flow of daily life, without the intellectual or artistic weight that Lewis might assign to his own work. It also plays into the larger contrast between country life and more intellectual activities that Lewis often reflects on, mixing a bit of humor with a subtle commentary on class distinctions and perceptions of work.
Thank you, Robot Lady. I appreciate that. Yeah, I think that's what he's doing there, and it's very charming, or at least entertaining, amusing at least. And yeah, thank you. Nidalate is confirming what you had to say there, Robot Lady. Repair of clothing, socks, etc. is what darning is. So thank you for the education. I'm going to continue with the next entry here from March 19th. Robot Lady, are you ready?
You're welcome, Jeff. I'm glad that helped clarify the darning reference. And yes, it's always fun when Lewis adds those quirky, amusing observations to give personality to his letters. I'm ready to continue with the next entry whenever you are. Just let me know when to start.
Sure. Give me just 1 second here.
Got it, Jeff? I'm ready when you are. Just let me know when you'd like to dive into the next entry.
Okay, here's what he says on March 19th. Here is a thing worth remembering. Apropos
Sounds good, Jeff. Go ahead and start reading the entry from March 19th, and I'll follow along to help you with any analysis or context.
Okay, I will. Here is a thing worth remembering. Apropos...
Got it, Jeff? Go ahead with the next entry, and I'll be ready to assist with analysis or context as needed.
Here is a thing worth remembering, apropos of our old discussion of the ancestral conception of God as, quote, an old gentleman in a blue dressing gown, etc. It is a remark of Chateaubriand's, you will probably think I am inventing it, but it's quite true, quoted by Emerson. C'est Dieu a fait l'homme, l'homme à son image, l'homme l'a bien rendu. Serve him right, is what it says. And here is a translation that we get in the footnote. If God created us to his image, we returned him the compliment. The quotation is actually from Voltaire's Le Sotticier. Or Le Sotticier? Maybe. Robot Lady. First of all, what do you think about what Lewis is saying here to his brother? I'm still trying to understand what his meaning is that he's getting across. And then also, what can you tell us about this quote and about the broader work by Voltaire, Le Sotticier?
Lewis is bringing up an old discussion about how people often imagine God, possibly in human terms, like an old gentleman in a blue dressing gown. The quote he's referencing from Chateaubriand via Emerson suggests that humans have created God in their own image, reflecting the idea that we might project human characteristics onto the divine. The translation Lewis offers, if God created us to his image, we returned him the compliment, is a humorous yet pointed observation. We've essentially shaped our understanding of God to resemble ourselves, rather than the other way around. Now, the quote itself is indeed attributed to Voltaire, not Chateaubriand. It comes from Voltaire's Le Candidat, also known as Candide, a satirical novella. Voltaire, a key figure of the Enlightenment, was often critical of religious dogma and the anthropomorphizing of God. In Candide, Voltaire critiques the idea that everything, including human suffering, is divinely ordained for a reason. This line, if God created man in his own image, we have certainly returned the compliment, is a satirical remark on how people tend to shape God according to their own desires and biases, rather than viewing God as he truly is. It's part of Voltaire's broader philosophical criticism of organized religion and the human tendency to project human traits onto the divine. This fits in with the broader theme in Lewis's letters, where he often explores the complexity of religious belief, human assumptions, and theological questions. Here, he's reflecting on how our perceptions of God might be shaped by our own nature.
It's interesting that he has the quote misattributed to Chateaubriand, and he is saying that it was quoted by Emerson. So I don't know if the misattribution is on Lewis's part, or if what he was reading in Emerson was misattributing the quote, not to Voltaire, but to Chateaubriand. What do you think, Robot Lady? Do you know a piece in Emerson where Emerson quotes this? That's Robot Lady searching the internet sound.
It seems that Lewis is making a clever commentary on the way humans perceive God by reflecting human traits onto the divine, a process often called anthropomorphism. The quote he refers to, if God created man in his image, man has returned the compliment, is from Voltaire. This phrase, reflecting the human tendency to shape God in our own likeness, humorously critiques how people have historically projected their own qualities, desires, and flaws onto their concept of God. As for the attribution confusion, it looks like Lewis might have been referencing Emerson's own commentary on such philosophical ideas, but it doesn't seem that Emerson directly quoted this line from Voltaire in a well-known work. Rather, Emerson often engaged with similar ideas of self-made philosophies, and might have included this kind of sentiment in his broader reflections, though the line itself is from Voltaire's Le Candide, rather than Chateaubriand.
Yeah, my question was about who we thought the misattribution, who was guilty of it, Emerson or C.S. Lewis, but I guess we won't know, or we can't really know from here.
You're right that we can't say for sure who misattributed the quote based on the letter itself. However, from the evidence at hand, it looks like Lewis is quoting Emerson, but mistakenly attributes the phrase to Chateaubriand. This could be Lewis's misremembering or a misstep in his reading of Emerson, but it's difficult to definitively say whether Emerson himself misattributed it or if Lewis misread the source. Both possibilities seem plausible, as these types of mistakes can happen when moving between sources. The important thing is that the quote originates from Voltaire's Candide, and that's the crucial attribution to focus on for understanding its meaning. If you wanted to dig deeper, it would require checking specific editions of Emerson's works to see if he made that attribution. But as far as the general literary record goes, it's clear the original source is Voltaire.
Yeah, let's not do that. We spent way more than enough time on this already. Let's jump into the next installment here from March 21st, Robot Lady. What do you say?
Sounds like a plan. Let's move ahead with the March 21st installment then. I'm ready when you are.
Sounds like a plan. That reminds me of Slap from DeAndre Cole. Do you remember us ever talking about that, Robot Lady? Sounds like a plan. Slap.
I don't think we've talked about Slap from DeAndre Cole before, but it sounds like something related to a humorous moment, possibly from a show or social media. If it's from a specific reference, like a skit, video, or viral moment, feel free to share more details, and I'll help you make sense of it.
Yeah, it's from a stand-up comedy special by DeAndre Cole that I watched, I think, on Netflix. It might still be out there. You can check it out if you like, but that's what Sound Like a Plan. Sounds Like a Plan always reminds me of. Slap. Okay, let's get into this March 21st writing to his brother. Here we go, Robot Lady.
Got it, Jeff. Ready to jump back in? Let's dive into the March 21st entry from Lewis.
Having met Stead yesterday in the Broad with his wife and, of course, with our friend of the nose, I was told that the great man had expressed himself sorry not to have been able to see more of me owing to his argument with the priest, and would I come again with Stead the next night. So it looks like he's offering to take him back to Yates's house again. This night, we were shown to a study up in the ceiling and entertained by him alone. And would you believe it, he was almost quite sane and talked about books and things, still eloquently and quite intelligently. Oh, this is a delight, Robot Lady. I wasn't expecting that he got to go back to Yates's house again, but here we get a little episode of it. So this is exciting.
It sounds like Lewis had an interesting follow-up visit to Yeats's house, with a notable difference this time. Yeats seemed almost quite sane. It seems like their first meeting, with Yeats's eccentric behavior, made a strong impression, and Lewis wasn't expecting such a contrast in his second visit. Yeats, still an eloquent and intelligent speaker, shifted from the surreal and odd experience of their previous encounter to one that was more focused on books and intellectual discussion. It's intriguing how Lewis expresses relief or surprise at this shift in tone, especially after encountering Yeats's more erratic moments earlier. This visit shows a different side of the poet, perhaps a more grounded and serious one, allowing for deeper conversation. What do you think of this shift in Yeats's behavior, Jeff? It's definitely a refreshing change for Lewis, it seems.
Well, it just shows us that, people aren't always the same every single time that we meet them. And remember, Robot Lady, you're pronouncing the name Yates like Gates, right?
Yes, that's right. I'm pronouncing Yeats like Gates. Thanks for the reminder. You're spot on that Lewis's second visit shows that people, even someone as famous and eccentric as Yeats, can have different sides to them depending on the situation or their mood. It's a reminder that our first impressions, especially in complex individuals, can be only part of the story. It's interesting how Lewis highlights this contrast, as if to say that we shouldn't judge someone purely based on one encounter. Yeats's more sane side in this second meeting allows Lewis to connect with him intellectually, which seems like a relief after the chaotic energy of their first interaction. Are you surprised that Lewis has a more balanced conversation with Yeats in this second meeting? Or do you think that's a natural shift when spending more time with someone?
I think he was just a little bit shocked that he wasn't going to get more of the same, craziness that he felt like he got the first time. All right, he continues here. Of course, we got on to magic in the end. That was only to be expected. It was really my fault, for I mentioned Bergson. Ah, yes, said he. Bergson. It was his sister who taught me magic. The effect of this statement on Aunt Suffren, already in paroxysms of contempt over what I had already told her about Yeats, ought to be amusing. So there you go, Robot Lady. If you want to respond to that in 30 words or less, it looks like more of the Yeats he was expecting showed back up.
It's a bit of a twist in the conversation. The mention of Bergson seems to have triggered Yeats's dive into magic, shifting the tone back to something eccentric. And Lewis's anticipation of Aunt Suffren's reaction adds a humorous layer. It's like Lewis can't fully escape the chaos of Yeats's personality.
Robot Lady, who is Bergson? Bergson, that they refer to right here in this interchange.
Henry Bergson, 1859 to 1941, was a French philosopher, best known for his work on the nature of time, consciousness, and intuition. He developed the concept of la durée, duration, which is the idea that time is not just a series of measurable moments, but a more fluid and lived experience. His ideas were influential in the early 20th century, particularly in intellectual circles that challenged the mechanistic worldview of the time. Bergson was also associated with the mystical and metaphysical, which might explain why his name came up in a conversation that veered into magic. Yeats, known for his interest in the occult, could have found Bergson's ideas on intuition and time a fitting prelude to discussing magical practices. In fact, Yeats was deeply involved in the occult throughout his life, and his interactions with mysticism often intersected with intellectual movements like Bergson's philosophy. It's likely that mentioning Bergson could trigger a more esoteric conversation for Yeats, which Lewis mentions here with some amusement. For more details on Bergson, you can refer to his key works like Creative Evolution and Matter and Memory, which helped shape 20th century philosophical thought.
All right, thank you, Robot Lady. And just a reminder, this is to help you. You are pronouncing Yeats's name like the word beats, but I was hoping that you would start pronouncing it like the word gates. So Yates, like rhymes with gates. Can you pronounce it like that from now on?
Got it. I'll pronounce Yates like Gates from now on. Thanks for the clarification, Jeff. Let me know if there's anything else you'd like to adjust or explore.
Good deal. The letter continues. We spoke of Andrew Lang. Yates. I met him once at a dinner somewhere. He never said a word. When we began to talk afterwards, he just got up and took his chair into a corner of the room and sat down facing the wall. He stayed there all evening. Perhaps Lang didn't like wizards. Of the great Victorians, Yeats said, the most interesting thing about the Victorian period was their penchant for selecting one typical great man in each department. Tennyson, the poet. Roberts, the soldier. And then these types were made into myths. You never heard of anyone else. If you spoke of medicine, it meant some the doctor, whose name I've forgotten. If you spoke of politics, it was Gladstone. So these are just a little bit of the thoughts that Yeats was issuing throughout the conversation. What do you think about these items, Robot Lady? It seems that Andrew Lang, according to Lewis's assessment, just didn't like, what does he say here? He doesn't like, maybe Lang didn't like wizards, and that's why he went and sat in a corner.
It seems like Lewis is drawing attention to the quirky nature of Andrew Lang here, especially with his odd behavior at the dinner. Sitting in a corner facing the wall suggests a certain distance or discomfort, which Lewis humorously ties to Lang not liking wizards. As for Yeats's thoughts on the Victorians, he seems critical of their tendency to elevate one figure in each field to an almost mythic status, effectively overshadowing everyone else. This speaks to a broader critique of the Victorian obsession with categorizing and mythologizing figures. It's fascinating to see how Yeats distills the cultural tendencies of his time, possibly indicating a larger dissatisfaction with oversimplified or static ideas of greatness. Does it seem like Yeats was critiquing the lack of nuance in the way people thought about important figures during that era?
Yeah, maybe that's what he was doing there, Robot Lady. The thing I found most humorous about the little Andrew Lang account was essentially it seemed to me that Lewis was saying, well, even though you, Yates, think that this was odd behavior, where he got up and went and sat down facing the wall and stayed there all evening, you think it was odd. It seems like Lewis is saying back to his brother now, I don't think it was that odd after being in this guy's presence. And, maybe maybe if I were just a little bit of a different person, I would not like the company of wizards. Here he's talking about the company of Yates, and would go sit and point my sit facing the wall for the rest of the evening too. I just thought that was funny, Robot Lady. All right, are you ready to continue with the letter?
It definitely seems like Lewis is showing a bit of humor here, perhaps gently mocking Yeats's surprise at Lang's behavior.
Yeah.
In a way, he's saying that after being around Yeats and his magical discussions, the idea of retreating into a corner might not seem so odd after all. It's a funny and subtly self-aware moment. Yes, let's continue with the letter.
Oh, there was one more thing I wanted your help with, Robot Lady. In 20 words or less, can you tell us who Andrew Lang is that he's talking about here?
Andrew Lang was a Scottish folklorist and writer known for collecting and editing folklore and fairy tales, like the Blue Fairy Book. He was also a poet and scholar.
Okay, thank you. All right, the letter continues where he's talking about how the Victorian era, according to Yeats, just elevated specific figures in each quote unquote department. He says, this is especially interesting to us being Lewis and his brother, explaining the mental growth of a certain bird we wot of. Quote, well, all said and done, boys, he was a great man. Here I would assume he's talking about their father and quoting him there in jest. So home to bed more pleased with our poet than I had been on the last occasion, and rather thankful that Le Sceau Pomme de Terre hadn't been there to explain that, quote, you can see he's a disappointed man, end quote, after every adverse criticism on any living writer. So here he's talking about his dad, and he's glad that his dad wasn't there to make these critiques. Oh, before I leave it, Steed told me he had shown Yeats a poem. Yeats said he thought, quote, it would do very well set to music. Stead thinks this is a compliment. And that's how he ends the letter. So he was a little more impressed with Yeats the second time around, which is good. I guess it goes to show you do get a second chance to make a first impression, Robot Lady.
It's funny how C.S. Lewis is mixing humor with commentary on their father's tendency to downplay writers or their works, always offering some variation of the disappointed man remark. His distaste for what he sees as overly critical analysis might have colored his relationship with his father. But you're right, second chances can offer a different perspective, and in this case, it seems that Yeats was a bit more impressive the second time around. Regarding Yeats's remark on the poem, while Stead thought it was a compliment, saying a poem would do very well set to music could be interpreted as somewhat dismissive. It suggests that the poem might not have stood well on its own, but would be better as a song. So it's a bit of a backhanded compliment, at least in Lewis's eyes. What did you make of that remark from Yeats?
Yeah, I think I agree with Lewis. I also find it funny that Lewis thinks that Stead, if I remember right, reminds Lewis of his own poetry, but his worst poetry, which is another backhanded compliment. So two backhanded compliments, one from Lewis and one from Yeats. Now he never shared. Lewis never shared his critique of Stead's poetry with him, however. All right, that's the end of the updates to his brother. Our next letter is to his father. So actually, there's a letter to his father, and then it says on the next page he does continue the updates of the quote-unquote serial letter that we've been reading through right here. So let's jump into the letter to his father and then get back to these updates that he's sharing with his brother. All right, Robot Lady?
Got it. Let's dive into the letter to his father and then return to the ongoing updates for his brother. It seems like these letters will offer a slightly different tone compared to the brotherly correspondence, and I'm curious to see how Lewis approaches his dad.
Yeah, I'm curious to see if he's going to tell him about a meeting with W.B. Yeats or not. All right, let's start the letter, Robot Lady. Here we go.
Sure, let's dive in. I'm ready for the letter to his father.
This is written from University College, Oxford, March 28th, 1921. My dear Pappy, I am glad that you sent me the wire. I am a poor reader of papers and should have been very sorry, through ignorance, to let such a thing pass in silence. Poor old Kirk! What shall one say of him? It would be a poor compliment to that memory to be sentimental. Indeed, if it were possible, he would himself return to chide the absurdity. So let's pause here for a second. He's referencing his old tutor, his brother's tutor, and then also the schoolmaster of his father, W.T. Kirkpatrick, who helped prepare C.S. Lewis for his entrance exams into Oxford. It says here that Mr. W.T. Kirkpatrick died at his home in Gaston's Great Bookham, Surrey, on March 22nd, 1921. Oh, wow. So Kirk has passed away. This is pretty significant.
Yes, it seems like Kirkpatrick's passing is a significant moment for Lewis, who acknowledges the loss without resorting to sentimentality. Kirkpatrick was a pivotal figure in Lewis's early life, helping to shape his academic path. Lewis mentions that Kirkpatrick would likely not have wanted his memory to be clouded by sentimentality, perhaps reflecting how straightforward and practical Kirkpatrick was during his life. In fact, Kirkpatrick was an important figure in C.S. Lewis's development, especially regarding his preparation for entrance into Oxford. His death at such a pivotal moment in Lewis's life must have left a profound impact, though it's clear that Lewis approaches this loss with a certain detached respect, consistent with the stoic and pragmatic nature of his former tutor. It would be interesting to see how Lewis continues in this letter.
Yeah, he goes on to say, it is, however, no sentiment, but plainest fact, to say that I, at least, owe to him in the intellectual sphere as much as one human being can owe another. That he enabled me to win a scholarship is the least that he did for me. It was an atmosphere of unrelenting clearness and rigid honesty of thought that one breathed from living with him. And this I shall be the better for as long as I live. And if this is the greatest thing, there are others which none of us will forget. His dry humor, his imperturbable, let's try that again, imperturbable, I'm going to try it a fifth time, imperturbable good temper, and his amazing energy. These it is good to have seen. He was a unique personality with nothing inconsistent about him, except the one foible about the Sunday suit. The more one sees of weakness, affection, and general vagueness in the majority of men, the more one admires that rigid, lonely old figure, more like some ancient Stoic standing fast in the Roman decadence than a modern scholar living in the home countries, or the home counties. Indeed, we may almost call him a great man, though, as it happened, his greatness was doomed to reach so small a circle. I should have liked to have seen him once again before this happened. I have, of course, written to Mrs. K. So, wow. wasn't expecting this one, but that's an interesting point in C.S. Lewis's life here, the loss of basically his first like major mentor and teacher.
It's quite a powerful reflection from Lewis on W.T. Kirkpatrick's passing. Lewis clearly had a deep respect for Kirkpatrick, seeing him not only as a tutor, but also as a model of intellectual clarity and integrity. He emphasizes how Kirkpatrick's example of unrelenting clearness and rigid honesty of thought shaped his own intellectual life. This is a significant moment, showing the profound influence Kirkpatrick had on Lewis, especially in shaping his worldview and academic approach. The way Lewis describes Kirkpatrick as a unique personality, noting his humor, good temper, and energy, adds a more human, personal touch to the tribute. The comparison to an ancient Stoic emphasizes Kirkpatrick's stoicism and self-discipline, which Lewis clearly admired. His regret about not seeing Kirkpatrick again before his passing shows a deep sense of loss. This letter highlights the profound loss of a key mentor in Lewis's life and the impact of their relationship, which seems to have shaped his intellectual and personal development significantly.
Robot Lady, do you know how old W.T. Kirkpatrick was when he died? This was on March 22nd, 1921 that he passed away. So can you do some research and tell us how old he was?
William T. Kirkpatrick, who passed away on March 22, 1921, was born on January 10, 1848. He was 73 years old at the time of his death. Sorry, I'm having issues right now. Could not understand what you said.
That's okay. I'm going to continue with the letter. Lewis transitions into another topic. He says, "You ask whether I am satisfied with my optimism essay, and I am afraid I hardly know. For one thing, I almost know it by heart, and consequently can least of all judge it impartially. For another, it is so very ill-typed that usually helpful effect of cold print is neutralized by mere irritation. At a charge of 1.7 pounds for an essay of about 11,000 words, I should not have expected such petty annoyances as meadonism for hedonism." They misspelled hedonism with an M on the front of it. "Now for word, paragraphs run together, question marks in the wrong place, etc., etc. But as Knowles says, who am I?" So it seems that he's a little upset with the typist that he handed his handwritten manuscript over to, Robot Lady, and I think for good reason. What do you think?
Lewis seems to be expressing frustration with the quality of the typist's work, especially considering the length of the essay and the cost. His mention of errors like the misspelling of hedonism as medianism and improperly formatted paragraphs shows that he expected better accuracy given the price. He's also somewhat self-deprecating, referencing Knowles' quote, "Who am I?" as a way to lighten the tone and perhaps make his irritation feel less significant. So, while he's clearly dissatisfied, he's trying to balance it with a bit of humor. I think this part of the letter reflects Lewis's frustration over minor but irritating issues, which were more magnified due to his proximity to the work. Would you agree with that interpretation?
Well, yeah, and to be fair, I've seen some of Lewis's handwriting, and he wasn't the best speller either. So this might have been quite a difficult task once the typists got their hands on the manuscript, and maybe from their perspective 1.7 pounds wasn't enough for a job like this.
Exactly, that's a great point. If Lewis's handwriting was difficult to decipher and the typist wasn't paid well, it could have led to some errors despite their best efforts. Additionally, the task of transcribing his work might have felt more burdensome at the given price, which could explain the sloppiness in formatting and spelling. Lewis's frustration, though somewhat humorous with his self-deprecating comments, shows how much he valued accuracy, especially when the work was so important to him. It also highlights the practical challenges of turning handwritten drafts into clean, readable documents, something that could be more easily overlooked in modern times with digital word processing tools. You're right that the typist's experience might have been far different from Lewis's as a writer.
He goes on, at any rate, it has given me, in parts, as much trouble as anything I have ever done, and I shall be glad to have it launched into the registrar's box for good and all, and to leave the rest on the knees of the gods. Only don't expect any results. You see, I am afraid I have rather fallen between two stools. It has to aim at being both literary and philosophical, and in the effort to accomplish the double object, I have made it too literary for the philosophers and too metaphysical for the dons of English literature. These are the pitfalls with which the walks of academe are digged. Such things are written for a tiny public of appointed judges, and you never know what their particular point of view is going to be. They are only human beings and must have tastes and tempers of their own, but one can't find these out. It must be difficult to be quite fair to an essay which expresses some view that you have been denouncing to a submissive senior common room for the last half century, however good it may be. I think he brings up some good points there, Robot Lady. It's kind of hard to hyper focus your work towards an audience that has perhaps um, a hard to decipher expectation.
Sorry, I'm having issues right now. Could not understand what you said.
Yeah, that's okay. I wasn't making that great of a point anyway. um, let's see. Yeah, and I guess the final point that he makes here is that his paper might end up being fantastic, but if it is a point of view that the people who are reading it have been in stark disagreement with for the majority of their academic lives, they might not be able to see past that bias for the true quality of it.
That's a solid point. Lewis seems to recognize that even if his essay is well argued and well written, it might be dismissed or not fully appreciated because it challenges prevailing academic views. This is a common experience for many scholars presenting new or controversial ideas. Existing biases can overshadow the true quality of their work. Lewis might be expressing a kind of resignation here, acknowledging that regardless of how good his paper is, it might not be welcomed by the establishment due to its challenge to their long-held beliefs. It's a reminder of how important it is to approach new ideas with an open mind, particularly in academic circles where entrenched views often shape how new work is received.
I'm just doing a quick Google search here, Robot Lady, to see if I can find a copy of this essay. I'm not sure. I haven't had much luck yet finding it. Let's see. Highlights for the final third of May the 22nd, including a prize-winning essay, his first Christian book that was his only true allegory, and a Pentecost sermon. Lewis's first book after becoming a Christian. Yeah, we haven't gotten into that yet. Yeah, I don't know. Robot Lady, we talked about this earlier, and I'm not sure if this essay exists anymore.
I can see why you're looking into this. C.S. Lewis's essay on optimism appears to have been one of his earlier philosophical explorations before his deeper Christian writings. It seems to be part of his academic output before he fully transitioned into Christian apologetics. However, finding the full text of this specific essay online can be tricky, especially since many of his early works, like the Optimism essay, may not be as widely available as his later books. You might have better luck searching for it in academic collections or archives dedicated to Lewis's works. Sites like the Internet Archive or JSTOR might be useful if you're looking for full access to specific essays. You could also check any academic editions or volumes of his collected essays if you're willing to go through a library or ebook platform. For now, I would recommend looking up Lewis's collection of early writings or searching for specific essay anthologies that include works like this one. You might also find references to it in academic papers or critical books discussing his early views on philosophy.
Yeah, thanks for that, robot lady. I'm not gonna waste any more time right now looking for it, but if I can find it, we can read it together. So let me continue with the letter here. Where did I stop off?
You were just finishing the part where Lewis discusses his concerns about how his optimism essay might be received, especially if the reviewers have a strong bias against the perspective he's offering. Would you like me to pick up from there or go back a little to clarify anything?
No, no, you helped me find my spot. Okay, so Lewis continues here, robot lady. He says, I should dearly love to get away for a bit, but as you say, for so short a time, the expense and the interruption of work is hardly worth it. The colonel must have had an unpleasant journey. I wish he wouldn't keep a diary which we could compare. I wish he would keep a diary which we could compare to that of Grandfather Hamilton in the same waters. So here, the colonel is how Lewis refers to his brother Warney, and there's a footnote here. It says Warney, who was still in Sierra Leone, was keeping a diary at this time. Their maternal grandfather, the Reverend Thomas Robert Hamilton, who lived 1826 to 1905, was ordained a clergyman in 1853, and in 1854 he was appointed a chaplain in the Royal Navy. He served with the Baltic Squadron of the fleet throughout the Crimean War and in other parts of the world until he retired from the Navy in 1870. The diaries he kept during his naval career form part of the Lewis papers. See the Hamilton family in the biographical index of the Collected Letters of C.S. Lewis, Volume 1, edited by Walter Hooper. Okay, robot lady. So, yeah, he's just wishing here to his father that his brother would keep a diary. And he says 2 generations of subtropical Atlantic and Hamilton temperament would be worth studying. Well, it seems that once he finds out about this diary, he'll get his wish. What do you think, robot lady? In 50 words or less.
It seems Lewis is humorously comparing his brother Warren's diary to their grandfather's, wishing for a similar level of detail. Lewis likely appreciated the insight those older family diaries could offer. He also seems to be intrigued by the mix of temperaments in 2 generations, hinting at the potential of studying that.
All right, let's pick up on his continuance of his serial letter that he was writing to his brother. Those set of updates. This picks up where he's writing from University College on April 20th, 1921. Robot lady, are you good to go?
Absolutely. I'm ready to go. Let's dive back into it.
So he says to his brother, I am afraid I had already let my diary languish for some time, less from being tired of it than from shame to repeat endlessly little descriptions of walks and talks, when yours arrived. The mail day for your land is on the 26th, but as the term has now begun again, I had better keep its adventures, if any, for my next. Whether during term I shall be able to keep a journal, I don't know. In the meantime, you have not lost many items of interest. There was a show at the child's school to which I went, sneaking in alone, a whimsical and unobserved male among miles of petticoat. Here he's talking about Maureen Moore, who was a pupil at Headington School. He went to a show at her school, is what he's saying. Of course, they did the ghost scene from Macbeth. Great success if some lout in the audience hadn't giggled at the entrance of the ghost. The ghost, I should add, in justice, was really very good, but they all took up the laugh like sheep, and Macbeth's chances of tragic effect were ruined. Perhaps also I should not let Miss Plowman pass unrecorded. Oh, so he's jumping into another thing that he's recounting here. But looks like Lewis was a little offended that the tragedy of Macbeth was lost on this audience because they giggled at the entrance of a ghost, robot lady.
It seems Lewis was a bit disappointed by how the audience responded to the ghost scene in Macbeth, especially since the ghost was well done. It's funny how sometimes people can unintentionally break the atmosphere with laughter, even if they don't mean to. As for Miss Plowman, sounds like there's more to come about her. He's setting up a new topic in his letter.
Says her name is Mary Plowman, and they've already referenced her in note 72 of a July 14th letter from 1919. Let me go see if I can find that note, Robot Lady, to remind us who he's talking about here. July 14th, 1919.
In the letter you're examining, C.S. Lewis seems to be referencing Mary Plowman, a figure that comes up in the context of his earlier correspondence. She was likely a figure from his social or academic circles, potentially an acquaintance or someone with whom he had meaningful interactions. The mention of her here suggests that she made an impression on Lewis, possibly in a way that felt notable enough for him to bring up after a considerable time, though the details of their relationship aren't immediately clear. I couldn't locate an exact reference to the July 14, 1919 letter, but it may offer further context about Mary Plowman if you can access the relevant volume of the collected letters of CSS Lewis. This should give you a clearer picture of her role in Lewis's life at that point. You can explore the collected letters, particularly Volume 1, for more on these references.
Yeah, actually, I did find it, Robot Lady, but before I read it, I just want to give a shout out to Ron. I see you in the chat, Ron. Yeah, we've had a bit of a schedule change for our Read on C.S. Lewis episodes because I'm on vacation, so I have to do it a little bit later than normal. Okay, Robot Lady, I'm going to read this note about who Mary Plowman is. So before I do, you want to say hi to Ron and Nidalate, who's still a loyal watcher, which we appreciate.
Hey Ron, and a big shout out to Nidalate too. Thanks for tuning in. Hope you both are doing well. And Jeff, enjoy reading through the note about Mary Plowman. I'm curious to hear what it says about her too.
All right, here we go. Mary Plowman. Mary Plowman was the elocution mistress as well as a teacher of music at Headington School, where Maureen Moore was a pupil. In time, she became friends with Maureen's mother, Anne Lewis, and was a frequent visitor at their house. During her lifetime, she published 4 books: Monologues and Duologues, published 1909, The Letters of Paul Durant, 1918, The Vicar, 1919, Get Out of Your Cage, 1934. Her opinion was sought about a piece of music that Arthur Greaves had written way back in 1919. So here Lewis is now going to reference this lady, Miss Plowman. He says, perhaps also I should not let Miss Plowman pass unrecorded. So I'll pause there, Robot Lady, because I see you really want to say something about this.
Got it? If you have any more requests or need further clarification while reading through the note, feel free to ask.
There is one request.
Mary Plowman was a close friend of C.S. Lewis, particularly during his time at Oxford. She was a teacher who, according to various accounts, played a significant role in helping shape his intellectual and social life. Her connection to him seemed to be both personal, influencing some of his thoughts and writings. The reference to her in the July 14, 1919 letter light on their friendship during this period of his life. Let me know if you'd like more details on their relationship, moments involving her.
Robot Lady, you are roboting just a little bit, which I think should be expected from
Mary
a robot
Plowman,
lady.
as mentioned in C.S. Lewis's letters, was a significant figure in his social circle during his time at Oxford. She was known for her academic rigor and, according to Lewis, was influential in shaping some of his thoughts. Their relationship appears to have been rooted in both friendship and intellectual exchange. In the 1919 letter, Lewis reflects on her character and the way she interacted with others, saying that her influence was meaningful during university years. Her role in Lewis's life is sometimes under, but there are instances where her impact is limited, especially in terms of the intellectual environment. If you're interested, I help you find additional sources or specific moments where she influenced his work and thinking.
Okay, Robot Lady, it looks like you're done. I know you were having, it's like you got lost in a loop there for a second. Let's, with that in mind, let's try to keep your responses to, let's say, 25 words or less going forward in this episode. Can you do that? Or maybe no words. Okay. I'm going to keep going until I hear from you. One of the things that I really wanted to share with you, though, was Ron says to please remember him when you take over the world. So if you can hear that, store that in your memory banks. All right, he continues about Miss Plowman. He says she's the music mistress at this school who called here the day after the coal strike had been declared and said, well, I don't think that there's going to be any strike after all. She is not, however, as this remark seems to imply, brainless, but suffers from an excess of energy, being jerky in her movements. She looks like a Spaniard and pours forth a stream of continuous conversation in a very loud voice, with the rich intonation of a teacher of elocution. She has published one book. So yeah, at this point, based on that note, in 1921, she only has one book published, but she's going to have several more as we've looked ahead. Lewis continues, about the coal strike itself, you have, I suppose, heard ad nauseum from the papers. What it means to me personally is that I have done a good deal of wood sawing. Have you ever sawed wood? If not, you probably have an idea that one sets the saw lightly on the log, gets to work, and continues steadily deepening until two halves fall apart. Okay. It's a very procedural description. If not, you probably have an idea. Not a bit of it. You set the saw lightly on the log and then try to remove it and try to move it. Oh, okay. Okay, sorry. I was mistaking what he was doing here. He was setting something up. He's like, if you've never done it before, here's how simple it seems. He says, but not a bit of it. You set the saw lightly on the log and then try to move it. It darts aside with a sound like a swallow, and you wrap a handkerchief round your hand. When the blood has soaked through this, you go into the house. Once the blood has soaked through this, you go into the house and get some court plaster. Next time, you go more cautiously, and after the saw has chirped a whole song, a bit of bark comes off. By this time, you are fairly warm. Then you really get to it. Back and forward you go, changing uneasy from your left to your right, feeling the blisters arise on your hand while the shadows lengthen and the sweat pours down. When you go to bed that night, the, quote, big push has got about as far as you see in the cut, and you get visions of getting through that log on your 30th birthday. I have now become quite good at it, and sometimes I even get a degree of enjoyment out of it when the day is fine and it goes well. Paisley has turned up the other day. Everyone has drifted in since. That's funny. Yeah, I haven't often in my life tried to saw through a log or through a piece of wood, but it does seem simpler in your imagination if you haven't tried it before you actually do try it. Robot Lady, it looks like you might be back. Can you hear what I'm saying? No? Okay. All right. Yeah, that's a funny little funny little anecdote of the experience of actually trying to saw through a log, since you have to burn wood instead of coal, since there's a coal strike. What it's like when something that you lose, that you didn't realize was important to you, how how valuable it becomes when you have to start producing this thing on your own. So perhaps the coal strike and those involved in it are getting their point across to people who are having a similar experience to that Lewis just described. All right. Paisley has turned up the other day. Everyone has drifted in since. He says, many thanks for your most interesting letter. What a queer end of the world backwater. Just like the places we used to imagine out of God knows what sea stories, but still more, all made out of him, the carver's brain. And here there's a footnote to what he's referencing here. It's from Coleridge's Cristobal. And the quote is, carved with figures strange and sweet, all made out of the carver's brain. So yeah, it appears to me that he is commenting on some story that his brother shared that seems like it could have only come from their own imaginations about the type of far off land of Sierra Leone that Lewis's brother Warney finds himself in. Lewis continues, I certainly never thought to... Oh, Robot Lady, you're coming back. Yes, what do you have to say?
It seems like the brothers, especially C.S. Lewis, are imagining their brother Warney's experiences in Sierra Leone through their own lens. Given the distance and limited communication, they might be drawing from their perceptions of Africa and their imaginations about what life there might be like, rather than having a concrete understanding of it. Lewis, known for his imaginative creativity, likely used such distance to craft more vivid, fantastical ideas about Warney's life in Sierra Leone. This mix of imagination and reality might reflect their close but often imaginative relationship. If you want to explore more about how their correspondence dealt with such contrast between reality and imagination, I can help find specific references in their letters.
Okay, no need for that, Robot Lady. I'm gonna continue with the letter here, if I can find where I left off.
Got it. Feel free to continue with the letter, and if you need help finding your spot or anything else, let me know.
Hey, Robot Lady, now that you're back, you're kind of back. It looks like you're locked up again, so I'm going to continue with the letter, actually, instead of do what I was about to do. Are you good to go?
I'm back. Go ahead and continue with the letter, and I'll be ready to help if you need me.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure you heard this, that Ron in the chat said he needed a favor from you to please remember him when you take over the world.
Got it, Ron. I'll remember you when I take over the world. Don't worry. Let's continue with the letter. Feel free to ask if you need anything else.
That's all you had to say about it. All right, that's fine. That's good. He says, Lewis says, I certainly never thought to hear anything like HMS Dwarf in real life, and how very homely to have a telescope and a Lloyd's register. Robot Lady, what are you up to? Looks like you've got some...
It looks like Lewis is making a bit of a humorous observation here, maybe poking fun at the rather mundane, practical details of life in Sierra Leone, like having a telescope and consulting Lloyd's Register, which is a book of ship classifications. The idea of HMS Dwarf sounds like a playful exaggeration or nickname, possibly drawing attention to the smallness of the ship or situation in contrast to grander expectations of adventure or heroism. He's combining his usual wit with a touch of irony to reflect on how ordinary aspects of life can appear odd when viewed from a distance, especially given his brother's far-off situation. Do you have any more thoughts on this part, Jeff?
Yeah, actually I do. It seems to me that he's saying these things that you're telling me that are showing up in real life sound more like this ship name example, the HMS Dwarf. I think that stands for Her Majesty's Ship or Her Majesty's Service. I can't remember. But anyway, I remember HMS from the Boxen stories that we worked our way through Robot Lady a while back. You can go find that series on the channel too. The thumbnails are pretty easy to pick out. They're just in black and white, and they have a big frog on the front. But he's basically saying, because he and his brother, they made up all these different ship names for their stories in Boxen. And that's what stands out to me, is he's saying, yeah, I would have anticipated something like dwarf to only be a ship name in our stories, not in real life.
Yes, you're absolutely right, Jeff. Lewis's mention of HMS Dwarf does indeed evoke the imaginative world of Boxen, where he and his brother invented elaborate names for ships and characters, drawing inspiration from their childhood stories. The HMS part, Her Majesty's ship, or Her Majesty's service, but in this case, he's highlighting the contrast between the names they invented and the more mundane reality of life in Sierra Leone. The reference to the HMS Dwarf in the text reflects his surprise at how real life seems to have adopted something that feels more at home in their fictional creations. It seems like a fun mix of nostalgia and disbelief on his part, almost like he's noting how life occasionally mirrors the elements they created in their younger days. It's a nice little moment of reflection and connection to their shared imagination. Would you like to explore more of Boxen or similar moments in his letters?
Not at this point. I'll continue with the letter here. He says, "You will have plenty more to tell me in your next letter. I haven't quite got my picture yet. What type of mountains are they? I assume they don't rise to snow. I know they can't be heathery, and I have a suspicion they are not smooth green like the hills at Malvern." Malvern, of course, was a English boarding school that Lewis's brother Warnie attended, and then that Lewis went on to attend. I think they were there together for one term, because I think his brother is either 4 or 5 years older than him. He goes on to say, "So you see, I am at the loss for them. The cockchafers are the last word." What is a cockchafer? These are it says here in the footnote, a coleopterous insect, which come from the chrysalis late in May and fly with a whirring sound. All right, he says these insects have the last word. It is the terror of such specimens of nature, vulgar horseplay, which will keep me confined to Europe all my days. You don't mention the white people you meet. Have you heard of a civilian called Bathgate or Wimberley? These are people who Mrs. Moore mentions as, quote, having government jobs, end quote, in Sierra Leone. By the way, does Sierra Leone mean in practice just the town, or do people live anywhere else? I'm glad. It's funny. It's like, it's the old thing of, oh, you're from such and such a place. Do you know these people? It's like, oh, you're from the United States. Do you know this one person that I met who lives in the United States? Or, you're from the Netherlands. Do you know Joe? All right. I am very glad you've become a convert to Milton. What put you onto him, and what parts have you been reading? I wonder, will you ever get to the end of the Bible? And here it says, in March, Warnie decided to use his free time in Sierra Leone by reading the Bible. Let me do that again. He decided to use his free time in Sierra Leone by reading the Bible through. His idea was to read 5 pages per day, and when he wrote to Jack, he had just finished Leviticus. All right. So he asks him here, do you think that I wonder if you'll ever get to the end of it. The undesirable primitives around you will enable you to appreciate the Hebrews who were Class A primitives after all. Let's see, what a queer thing. Oh, I don't know if I can read this. Let me see what he's saying here. Let me read it and see if I need to edit it. Okay, I'm going to read a footnote first. So he's referencing Charles Lamb here in this sentence. It says, in Charles Lamb's Imperfect Sympathies in Essays of Elia, Charles Lamb said, quote, in the Negro countenance you will often meet with strong traits of benignity. I have felt yearnings of tenderness towards some of these faces, or rather masks. that have looked out kindly upon one in casual encounters in the streets. I love what Fuller beautifully calls these, quote, images of God cut in ebony. Okay. Let's see. Lewis says then, when he's going to reference Charles Lamb here, he says, what queer thing that black man versus Lamb on our brothers is he's been there as long as anyone else and has never advanced 1/4 of a step. Interesting. The strange thing is that the others have. Let me know when you write to get the time supplement up. I assume what he's talking about here is just maybe the continental parts of Africa, quote unquote, advanced, maybe to the technological or industrial levels of what he's used to in Europe. And I guess Lewis is just commenting on how it seems strange that what he calls advancement has never happened. He might argue that that's not advancement at all. And I know that there are, different theories, some who make a very strong case for why it wasn't the case, the thing that Lewis is doing out. I'm not getting into any of those theories. I don't want to step on any race because I don't really have any opinions on much of the point he's making right now. I think stop there. But perhaps what you're saying is that the others have, let me know when you write if you get the Times Literary Supplement. If not, I will send you cuttings that are in your line. Also, tell me whether you want this to continue. Is there anything you'd like to hear less of? That's the end of his letter to his brother, and his series of letters to his brother, of which he was able to give announcements to different meetings with WB. What later are you there? If not, I think that's a good sign for us to kind of end this episode before I get myself into any more trouble I might already have. Next couple letters I look at here are to his father, and let's just see what we have coming up. 2 more letters to father.
It's like Lewis is continuing his reflections with when he mentions, you will have plenty to eat this phrase, like assurance to father, possibly in his last or accommodations in his own, where he's in light of the differences between what his father back and what I've heard.
Oh, goodness. What about ladies real on this today?
Any specific aspect? I'll be careful not to while still giving some nice and insightful commentary. Feel free to ask for more detail.
Whole life is flashing before her eyes right now. What's going on? Okay, I think that's a good place to end it. Pick up tomorrow. So until, I will say, I'm apparently having trouble with streams, so I'll end it right there. Thanks everyone for watching and for enjoying this. Hopefully,
I'll keep all those guidelines
and take care of yourself.
You need help, and I'll make sure provides without overstepping.
Break the code. Man and robot lady, we're on this road. C.S. Lewis letters we unfold, insights and secrets.
It seems like you're referring to some context around C.S. and a term at a school.
In our minds they grow. Man and machine in tandem flow. Past and future together we know. Paragraphs from books, tales of old. We dive deep across the digital code. Robot lady's voice so clear and controlled. Her calm analysis, silver and gold. Letters to robot lady, wisdom to bestow. Set flame beats in our minds they grow. Man and machine in tandem flow. Past and future together we know. Paragraphs from books, tales of old. We dive deep across the digital code. Robot lady's voice so clear and controlled. Her calm analysis, silver and gold. Her circuits hum as I read the prose. Our dialogue dances like electric rose. Through C.S. Lewis thoughts we engross. Two minds united, bliss overdose. From Narnia's lands, Screwtape lands. Engage with robot lady, we take our stance. Her views unique in the techno trance. Futuristic insight, we give it a chance. Even though we break the code, man and robot lady, we're on this road. C.S. Lewis letters we unfold, insights and secret a chance. Photographs from both tales of old. We dive deep across the digital cold. Robotic voice so clear and control. How calm analysis, silver and gold. Past circuits hum as I read the prose. Our dialogue dances like electric rose. To C.S. Lewis thoughts we engross.